The following is an exclusive presentation of Jessup Broadcasting, the sports leader in Southeast Georgia.
World famous. The world famous Butch and Bob Show.
Good morning, world famous Butch and Bob Show here for this Monday morning, the 7th day of December. And Bob, we've got a couple of special guests on the phone with us this morning. Go ahead, Bob, here on the world famous Butch and Bob Show.
Well, we got State Representative Bill Werkheiser. Steve Meeks going to join us as well. Can we have two people at one time?
Yes, we can.
We can.
Go ahead, guys.
Bill, you
okay. Good morning. So we're up in Athens along with Senator Tillery. We are in Athens at the biennial, and that's a fancy word for every 2 years. So on the even numbered years in election, when right after elections are held, all the legislators, House, Senate, Democrats, Republicans get together, and the University of Georgia lines up a bunch of meetings and speakers to get us up to date on stuff. And, for example, right now, we got Commissioner Dunn and some other people telling us about the broadband mapping program that they've been going on for 2 years to see where we need to expand broadband service in Georgia.
And where do you think they need to do that? I know one area for sure, going down 301.
We point that out so frequently, Bob.
What's that?
What did you say, Stephen?
Yeah, I don't think we need a government study to figure that out.
No, we don't need a government study to figure that out, that's for sure.
Some things are just common sense.
Well, the reason I did get you on the phone, of course, the president was at Valdosta on Saturday night, and he's still bashing our governor and secretary of state, asking for a special session. Just want to get your thoughts on. I saw the lieutenant governor yesterday defending the governor, saying he's just following state law. There's not going to be a session. So, your thoughts? Should there be a session? Will there be a session? Just want to get both of y'all's thoughts on that.
Well, the reason I grabbed Stephen is I said he gets all the hard questions, so we'll start with him.
Stephen Meeks. Go ahead.
Good morning. We're getting lots of calls, and I think last week the Trump campaign actually started calling all the legislators to pressure us to go back into session. Again, as far as we have been able to determine and talking to our council and others this morning, that we've still got to have 3/5 of the legislature to call us back into session, or the governor calls us back in. Only two ways that we can go into session. Right now, obviously, given the breakdown of the Democrat Republicans in the House, we don't have the votes, the 3/5, to do that. I understand there's a petition circulating this morning that I haven't seen the wording of it or the justification of it, but it'll be something we'll look at whenever we see that. But as of now, the votes aren't there for us to call ourselves back into session to take any action.
Would the other one of y'all vote to go back to session? Do you see any reason to go back to session? That's the question people are asking.
Absolutely. If nothing else, to discuss, changes or for discovery. The reason, and we both support Governor Kemp, and the reason he says he won't call us back in is because there's nothing we can do on an ongoing election. There's not a judge in America that would allow us to go in and make law changes to an election that's already been cast. The election that we had in November. But now, having said that, we've got several bills already teed up that we need to tighten up our election laws going forward. And that's why we are doing things. Though last week, many of your listeners know that the Senate held a hearing. I think it lasted just shy of 9 hours. I listened to 6 hours of it while I was working. And the House is going to have its turn next week with Shaw Blackman, who's head of that committee. So we are inviting and listening to everyone who wants to speak. That's why it lasted 9 hours. Everything's being investigated. But one thing that a lot of people are failing to realize is a lot of these fraud cases that they heard during the city committee were in other states, and so we can't do anything about those. Many of the things, and I'm going to go ahead and address, and this will probably make some people mad, the video in Fulton County of them pulling out suitcases and scanning late in the night and early in the morning. Those cameras were on there 24/7, and they were being monitored. First of all, the GOP watchers were not sitting home. I don't know where that narrative started. And the Secretary of State monitors were there the whole time. Those were sealed, if you want to call them suitcases. They're black ballot boxes of absentee ballots. And the reason they scanned them so late at night, because they needed to, during when the polls were open, they needed to be doing that business. So it's either come in at 4 in the morning before the polls open, or to do it at night after the polls close, and you do all your cleanup stuff. A couple other things. For example, the 2,600 votes in Floyd County. That was like a lot of cases. It was not a matter of fraud. It was a matter of someone not doing their job. I talked to a couple of folks last week and this is another change that we're going to make with as far as the voting procedures. Had that guy been looking at the screen, there was a black line. Unfortunately, it was only about an inch thick. It went across his monitor and said, "Insert your data card." I think it was a step 4 or 6, and he didn't do it. And so one of the changes that are going to be made software-wise is for the entire screen to flash red with a big white box and to say, "Insert your voting card," or the data card for that particular precinct. So, again, myself, Meeks, Raffensperger, Kemp, all voted for Trump. But we cannot, we've got to have substantiated, and I'm not saying there's not. There's one of the things that we're looking at, and I talked to Saul Blackman last night, is we've got some issues with some mail-in ballots, and the fact that Trump only lost by 13,000 votes, there's certainly room and a chance there, but we've got to have good hard evidence. And I'll say one last thing because I'm talking too much. I'll let Stephen talk. But you got to remember that almost all the cases, and especially in Georgia, when a suit was filed in Georgia, it was dismissed by a Trump-appointed federal judge. So we're trying. There's a lot of people trying. And so I'll pass it on, Stephen, unless you got a same or different question.
Well, the only other thing I would point out there is, when we start looking back at how we're doing things, and there's a lot of questions about the electors and the legislature appointing the electors. Obviously, the U.S. Constitution gives the states that ability, and since the 60s, current law has been that the parties select a slate of electors for both parties, and the majority of whoever wins the majority of the vote wins the electors. The one thing that I think we have to look at in that aspect is whatever we do, we're setting precedent. We're setting precedent for future elections, much like the U.S. Senate with the nuclear option that so many folks opposed and went ahead and instituted it. Now it's there, and we can approve judges on a majority vote instead of a supermajority. So we have to make sure we're mindful that as we move forward, whatever we do, we are setting precedent for future elections and making sure that we're instilling security and confidence in our election system. The other part of that, I think, that is important is Supreme Court case Purcell that has already been determined that once the ball game starts, you can't change the rules. when we look back at the way we've done things in Georgia, obviously the state's responsible for the manner in which elections are held, the voting machines, or the way it's conducted, and then obviously the federal government says who can and cannot vote in that election. So what we're doing is following obviously intertwined federal and state law with the conducting of the election. But I think we have to put all that into the big picture whenever we start looking at where do we go and how do we reinstill that confidence in our system.
Well, I guess the one question I've got is, how many more people are going to come out and support the governor? I mean, the governor's getting bashed. Kelly Loeffler's really in a box because she was asked a straight, direct question several times last night. Who do you support, the governor or the president? And she's in a bad spot because she says the governor, then she makes mad the Trump supporters, but the governor's the one that appointed her to that position. So, I mean, the lieutenant governor came out and supported the governor, but the governor's just getting bashed constantly by the president. And I don't see a lot of people in the GOP coming out and supporting the governor. So where's that support at?
Yeah, and I mean, if you were to ask me myself, I mean, I support both the Trump and Governor Kemp. I don't know why it's in either or. The real question is, are you going to support?
Well, the either or is because the president's saying the governor doesn't know what he's doing. I mean, he said it point blank several times. I mean, he's been bashing the governor for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and especially in Georgia, this is insane. I used to tell people, I try to stress how close that Governor Kemp won. He only won by 55,000 votes out of 4 million. Now we got President Trump lost, or at this present count, he's down 13,000 out of 7 million. So I'm a math person. That's like taking a room. Let's say you had an election of 250 people, and it would only take one person to change the entire room. That's because those numbers are just so big that it's just unfathomable, and that's the problem. In fact, in most of the other states, the numbers are a lot bigger. And so do we have that kind of spread, 13,000 among mail-in ballots? And that's what we're digging into. And I think you'll hear some of that during the hearing. I know people are mad at us and sending us, I'm getting angry texts, emails, messages, and I'm not talking about just from all over the country. But so I think somebody's keeping count. I think we got 600 emails on Saturday, 342 on Sunday. And so if any of your listeners have emailed us at our legislative account, there's a good chance you're not going to get a reply because it's hard. We do have jobs. It's hard to sift out and find the ones who are from our district. And so I guess maybe using our bill at Werkheiser.com. But again, if people have the perception that because you're not hearing from us that we're not trying, could be no further than the truth. But we're just trying to work within the bounds of what we can. And again, I go back. Remember, in the judicial system, these lawsuits were getting thrown out by Trump-appointed federal. So you've got, on a matter this serious, you better have an airtight case. And so we are trying to go through every allegation one by one to find enough fraud, to take the next step.
On the phone with us right now, State Representatives Bill Werkheiser and Stephen Meeks. Will y'all take some text message questions that have come in up here on the screen?
Stephen said he'd love to.
Okay, here we go. You volunteered them, huh, Bill? All right. Anything that y'all working on the election for January 5th? You can't change what happened in November, but what about January 5th? Anything being worked on right now? If somebody wants to know, what about January 5th election?
Well, he's saying it was a text message. So,
I'm just reading text messages here. Somebody says, what about January 5th? You said you couldn't do anything about the November results. What about January 5th? Anything being done to reassure people their vote will be counted correctly in the January 5th election?
We cannot legislatively do anything because that's still part of an election that's already been cast. So if we were to go in, let's say we go in tomorrow and the House and Senate both pass a bill and the governor signs it, and we say, we're not going to have any mail-in ballots. We can't do that. And so, because it's still part of a current election going on. And so, what we're doing is saying get out and vote.
Okay. Let me go on to the next question here. It says, can either one of you, this is a text message that has come in on our screen here from one of our listeners. It says, can either one of you say without any hesitation that you trust the Dominion voting machines? There's hesitation there, y'all.
The way that it has, my experience with it, I would say yes, I trust it. You know, are there cases that we've heard in Ware County that there were some votes switched? I don't, and the reason I say that is in Wayne County, and thanks to the good work of our elections folks there, our hand count matched the computer count. So I don't know that. I mean, are there isolated incidents? We're hearing that. Has it been proven? And I know they're working on a particular machine. I understand in Ware County, but at the end of the day, the system and the experience that I had in talking with election folks, the hand count matched the computer count.
Okay.
So,
the next.
Butch and Bob.
Go ahead, Bill.
Y'all had Tammy Thornton on last week.
Yes.
He has all the confidence in the world. I talked to my other two, the one in Evans County and Tattnall County. They have 100% confidence in the system. And what Stephen just said, we counted the ballots without the machines, and it was a perfect match in all three of my counties, and I think most of the counties in South Georgia. So again, I think it goes into mail-in ballots, not the machines. And I know there's some crazy stuff out there, but think about this too. There's two things I always point to: the hand count, not using the machines. And so if you say, well, you're counting fraudulent ballots, well, that's a different story. That's not the machine. And I'm going to tell you a story that was kind of an epiphany moment for me, and I'm almost embarrassed to share it, but here's what happened at Thanksgiving. I had 13 adults and a bunch of kids. We had a lot scaled down, but that was our immediate family and my in-laws. We had 13. There was 12 college-educated adults in my family. All 12 voted for every Republican on the ballot. 6 of them did not vote. 6 of them did not vote for Trump, okay? Let that sink in. 6 out of 12 Republicans. They voted for every Republican on the ballot, but they either one voted for Biden, the other 5 either voted third party or didn't vote at all. So the question, and I know this is going to make a lot of people mad, but there's that's 50%. I'm sure it's not 50%. That was just one small sampling. That's bigger than a 13,000 spread. And so the folks who cannot bring themselves to vote for Trump, either for personality and certainly not for policy reasons, and it's mostly the millennials, the 30-year-olds, which I'll say this, we generally ignore because people 55 years and older outvoted millennials 6-1 in the past, okay? That didn't happen this time. And the millennials, they're not going to do it. And so it is what it is. I mean, and so with that close of a margin, I don't know how we fix that.
Okay, let's move on to the next
that
question.
had nothing to do with Dominion machines.
Right. It looks like y'all are looking more into the mail-in ballots, where if there's any fraud that's found, that's going to where it's going to be found. From what y'all are saying this morning, y'all are looking into that, but y'all, it takes time to do the investigation. The next question that's popped up here on our screen, a listener text in: why didn't David Perdue show up for the debate last night? Bill?
We cannot speak for the senator on that.
Okay, so you don't know why he didn't. I know he gave several reasons in the news media, but I didn't know if y'all had any inside information there. But apparently not.
Good morning.
Okay, and so those are some of the questions that have come in this morning on our text messages here from our listeners, and Bill, Stephen, from what you're saying there, y'all are doing some investigation into the voting process, but that takes time. Is that what basically we're getting from y'all this morning? That's what many of the state legislatures are doing?
The House Government Oversight Committee will have a hearing this week to listen to testimony regarding the election and the issues that we have seen come from the election. And obviously the Secretary of State is also continuing to investigate each and every issue that comes across their table. Obviously, or you may not know, the governor recently approved that the GBI be able to participate and help out with any investigations that are ongoing. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. And so they're taking a look at that, as we speak, and everything that comes through. And again, we get back to a lot of the information that's out there. I mean, Bill and I both send, facts and figures that are on social media to the Secretary of State's office. And say, okay, can you verify what we're seeing here? And usually it's coming back a different set of data points that's being used to make that determination. And it's not the most accurate information that's being put out, and that's part of what we're having to work through. Is even within social media and everything that's out there, what is factual and what is misinformation, and so we're sending a lot of that to the Secretary of State to make sure, hey, can we verify what we're getting from constituents? And usually that comes back the data is really not accurate.
What seems strange about all this is the fact that you've got Republicans versus Republicans here, and that's a little unusual. It's not like the state is controlled by a Democratic governor or a Democratic state Secretary of State. It's Republican governor, Republican Secretary of State, Republican judge who didn't allow certain proceedings to go through on the Trump campaign's appeal. And it's a lot of Republicans out there are saying they wish that the Republicans would follow Ronald Reagan's words from back in the 80s: speak no ill will of a fellow Republican.
Yeah, I think that ship has sailed.
I know you've said that before, Bill. I wanted to see if you'd say it again.
Let me ask,
here comes Bob again. Hold on a second.
And I think social media has a lot of blame. People are pretty bold behind the keyboard.
Oh yeah, they're very bold behind the keyboard because they can do it anonymously. Okay, Bob?
As we mentioned, these two runoffs on January 5th are very, very important for the entire state of Georgia, and everybody's watching the state of Georgia. But there's a problem. You mentioned your household, Bill. I'm just doing surveys around town, and a lot of people, diehard Republicans, told me they're done voting. They're not going to vote again because the president's told them the election's rigged, so why vote? So how does the GOP overcome that, knowing that these two Senate races are very, very important for the state of Georgia and for the Republican Party? So how does the GOP, with all this infighting, avoid that or get over that obstacle? I mean, that's the obstacle. You want people to go vote, but yet you got the man in charge saying it's rigged. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and I listened to the hearing or the rally in Alpharetta where Powell and Linwood came straight out and said, "Don't go to the polls." That's the worst advice that could be given. Again, whether it's a small household sampling or talking to people in the community, those had nothing to do with Dominion machines. The data's not there. We have got to go vote if we want to. And you know how smart and divinely inspired were our forefathers to set up both the three branches of government and the electoral college system to give us those kind of protections when they weren't even needed back in their time. But having some balance of power among the three branches of government is now laying in the seat of Georgia's lap with this election on January 5th. We have got to get out and vote.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that certain Republicans will not get out and vote because they thought that the election was rigged. I mean, this is a way to get more numbers out, I would think, to keep the two Republican senators in power to ensure there is a conservative voice up there in Washington. I was just amazed what Bob just said. But
I'm just telling you, I've done a sample around. I've talked to 10, 20 people that have told me point blank to my face they're not voting because it's rigged. So these are diehard Republicans. So I'm just telling you, that sentiment's out there. It's going to be an obstacle, and it's playing right into the Democratic Party's hands because they're sitting back laughing at all this infighting, and it just continues. It seems to have been going on ever since the race between Kelly Loeffler and Doug Collins, and so I mean, it just continues on, and people are just sitting back. When does the infighting between the Republicans stop? As the Secretary of State said yesterday, look, he's Republican, the governor's Republican. They're all Republicans. They all vote for Trump, but unfortunately, they voted 3 times, and the vote doesn't say that. So, the question, I guess, does this go all the way to the Supreme Court? That's the question that I haven't heard anybody ask. Is that where the president's going to take this, all the way to the Supreme Court?
Well, you can't just take something to them. You've got to start the lower courts, and as we said earlier. Most of those cases have been getting thrown out in federal court, and more than I know the case in Georgia by a Trump-appointed federal judge. So it could, but you've got to get a court case first. But yeah, sure, it could go. We do have a January 20th inauguration deadline as well looming on us.
Well, but the other part of that is, and the framers of our Constitution had great insight in that the way that it is designed to work is really is tossed to the House of Representatives and Congress. And then there is one member, I understand, planning to contest the electors in January whenever Congress returns. The way that I understand it is if you have one member of the House and one member of the Senate to object procedurally to the electors, then it is then procedurally tossed to the House of Representatives for a vote for the president. And the way that vote works is it's one vote per state. And so obviously if you've got a majority Republican delegation, they'll obviously vote for Trump and vice versa. But that is the way that our forefathers designed it in those type situations. So whether it ends up at the House of Representatives or ends up at the Supreme Court, we don't know yet how that happens.
Hey, and to take that one step further, guess who votes on vice president? The Senate. So you would have a Trump president and a Kamala Harris vice president.
Well, it's the year 2020.
2020's been a strange year. All right, Bill, Stephen Meeks, and Bill Werkheiser, our state representatives, calling in this morning from Athens as they're at a meeting up there. We appreciate y'all taking 30 minutes out of your busy time. We hope we did not get you in trouble with the Speaker of the House or anyone like that for taking time out to talk to your constituents. Just tell them that you're out there talking to your constituents, and that's a get out of jail free card right there. Okay.
All right, well, thank you. We always appreciate what y'all do, and we'll talk later.
All right, take care.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye. All right, WIFO 105.5 FM in Jessup, and, of course, that's Bill Werkheiser and Stephen Meeks calling in this morning here on the world-famous Butch and Bob Show. And, Bob, that was a good 30 minutes, very informative there.
I appreciate them calling in, like I said.
The world-famous Butch and Bob Show.